afternoon, everyone, to another exciting episode of BWHR Voices. Today, we have with us Mr. Emmanuel David, a very renowned professional in the HR fraternity who doesn't need much of an introduction. We'll be talking about, art of balancing work and family life, considering it's such an important and hot topic of discussion, specifically, I would say, post-COVID, though it was a mandate prior to COVID as well. But, post that, the relevance of the balancing of work and family life has actually increased. Um, just a small introduction of what the conversation will lay as an outlay will be. In today's fast paced world, juggling work and family life has become a major challenge for many people. Pressure to succeed in our careers and provide for our families can make it difficult to maintain a healthy work life balance. However, it is important to remember that achieving a balance between work and family life is essential for our overall well being as well as happiness. Mr. David, my first question to you, and as a matter of fact, that we're discussing a very generic issue, but yet, employees or employers on both everybody's end, we really do not know how to manage both things and how to keep your boats sailing. So, what are some of the effective strategies for balancing work and family life according to you?
I think, thank you so much, Sugan. It's a good topic to kind of go through. Though, am I the best person to speak on it? I'm not so sure, because when I told my 21-year-old son I'm going in for this discussion, he says, "Hey, you've not been balancing," he said. And that's just a stakeholder point of view that, the needs which are there, and need to be alive on it. And I think I like to kind of look at it from two dimensions. What is life? What is work? And very often we get confused. For some people, work is life only, and therefore it becomes a challenge. But fortunately or unfortunately for us, COVID has taught us that there is something beyond work, especially when work from home started. And then when people were in distress, the ones who took care were family members. And it was important that that equation is there, that we know how to work and be with the family as well.
Right.
It is not just for you, but for them as well. So I think that was one, aspect which brought us all to life. How do we put it into perspective is key. I think for anyone, for that matter, and I've been telling also different leaders and younger people, clarity of purpose is key. What is it you wish to do? Why do you want to do that? And when that clarity is there, it can be through the form of excellence in work and also family as well. I remember someone telling me many, many years ago that at the work, you can be dispensable, but for the family, you're indispensable. So just pause and think on that question itself, that statement. So how many of us are alive to that we are indispensable to the family? We know of job cuts and layoffs right now. They get somebody else. But for the parent, you're the only child or son. For the wife, you're the husband. For the child, you're the father or the mother. So I think that clarity needs to come about. And if you say, hey, I'm doing this, that's how it is. And talking of strategies, coming from my own home, my wife led a very active life. She was a lecturer in a college. In fact, she taught in two colleges. She also did a freelance as a radio jockey. But when we got married, she said, listen, I don't intend to work. I'd like to be a friend to children. And I think that kind of paid off. It's not that she didn't do anything, but she said, I'm not going to let TV be the babysitter for my children. And today, I think she's one who holds our family together. And there's a choice she made, and she has no regrets about it. And now, with the COVID, she equipped herself with many things to be more productive once the children are older. So I think that clarity is key. you were to say. And when we are able to say this is important and it works, but also dialogue is very key. And I've had situations where I did mention that there is an important project or a difficult negotiation and it's going to eat up time. So by letting family members know that this is where the challenges someone is facing, I think there was a sense of understanding. And once that was true, then we had opportunity to again, do what we wanted to do. So clarity and dialogue, I think, are two effective things to work around. Similarly, if you're an employee or an employer, sharing to your colleagues and your bosses with clarity that, listen, this is something, there's an ailing
Actually,
relative or there's a
balancing it out
family.
in a way that you clear it to your managers also. Look, I will be giving my full attention to work the 9 and 10 hours,
Yes,
at work. But after that, it is something that
yes,
personal time, you could say, or family time.
yes,
So that is a basic differentiation that an employee also has to make within the organization, not just at
correct.
home, but within the organizations as well.
So if you really look at it, when I said clarity, see, where does your security come from?
Mm.
So very often, if you are insecure about our jobs, then you would give in to whatever pressures are there. But if you're capable and competent and you're putting the effort to learn, and people are aware that that's where your security comes from.
Mm.
And I'm not so sure how much effort we put in actually learning something on the job or the nuances of it. We are expecting someone else to do it. We are expecting someone else to kind of tell us, or we think sending an email is work. It's not so. I would
Mm.
expect people to, be very thorough about what they're doing. And you see, people who are maestros in their work are the ones who also, enjoy what they're doing, and people also recognize them. So I think first threshold is competence. Are you competent? Ask yourself. Your
Mm.
security comes from your capability and competence. The rest all is okay.
And how, sir, in your view, can technology, be both helpful and harmful in achieving a balance between work and family life? Because it is considered an enabler across issues, across segments. Technology is an enabler. How do you think it's an enabler, in achieving a balance between work and family life?
No, technology is a fantastic enabler. It's a very good slave and a horrible master. That's what I would say. So you can put in schedule. Outlook asks you, when do you want to schedule
Mhm.
this mail, right? And Outlook also has been very kind to tell us that it's after office hours and so on and so forth. So, and you have so many other little productivity tools. We can use those like AnyDo and scheduling things. And the key is to some amount of planning, that what would the week look like? What would the month look like? What are the major projects? Especially in an organization, there's a strategic plan. There are certain milestones to be done. And if you know that this is what we're accountable for, and then enable technology to help us, it'll be helpful. But at the same time, can you also turn off that notification button on your cell phone? That is at about 1 a.m. Suddenly email comes and you wake up and you kind of try to respond or do something. And what are you trying to do? So technology becomes a master there, which is a
Mm.
bad master. So it has to be a great slave for you. And by scheduling things, by using the best of technology, sometimes I use this. Nowadays, speech to text is very easy. Are
Right.
we using it? Right?
Okay.
We don't need, especially post my superannuation, I use it. Then I correct it, or someone helped me a little bit of editing, and it's easier. But if I have to sit and write it and type it out, it becomes a bit of a challenge.
Of
So
course.
there are all such tools available, and we just need to kind of see where our pain points is, and then work around it. But if you get enslaved to the cell phone and others, then you will forever be responding, you will forever be catching up. And there are some
Yeah,
folks
actually,
who,
we need to put a full stop on till when or how do we need to actually make use of technology as an enabler also, because you very rightly said it needs to be slave till a point. It shouldn't be
yes,
hampering somebody's personal life also. It shouldn't come become an enabler to an extent that, your life becomes, the work only becomes life, and then there is no time for family time as well. So that is very
Yes.
rightly pointed out. But I would also like to lay emphasis on the fact, while achieving all these goals, there must be certain common challenges also that people face, when they're trying to make work, when they're trying to balance out work and family life together. So, one, what are all those challenges according to you, and how can they be overcome?
Yeah. Now, let me answer this a little different way. And about a for 15 odd years ago, just I was hitting a milestone birthday, and then I asked myself certain questions, and then I said, let me ask, different people. Whenever I met people in training sessions or in informal employee gatherings, I asked two questions. I said, do you have? Are you able to have a good dialogue with your spouse? First question. The second question is, what hobby do you pursue? And so for the first question, also people, in a group of 15, 20 or 30, even civil servants, they were not able to put up their hand. Huh? Okay, listen carefully. Second thing also, the best hobby they thought was reading newspapers and watching TV or watching cricket. I said, what else is there for you? Then I said, now, do you know why I asked you this question? I said, see, in a few years, because once you're after 50, you're going to retire. If you don't have a meaningful dialogue with your spouse, you're going to meet a stranger.
Very true.
Okay. And if you do not have a meaningful hobby, you are not knowing how to do what you want to do in that time, because everybody else at work will be busy. And so I would say these are some very simple things, questions I would like all our listeners to answer. And it is going to pay you superior dividends, because having that dialogue with your spouse or your children or your parent, I mean, whoever you're, whatever may be your situation with someone known, gives you that sense of personal intimacy and security. I think that's important. And a hobby is something which is of your heart. It's a discretionary time. Okay. Then when you have something like that and you're working towards it, it is easy. However, it's also right to say that there are challenges. I'm not kind of wishing it away that there are no challenges. There will be projects, there will be deadlines. And for that, as I mentioned earlier, a little feed forward is key. Letting people know what is going to happen ahead. And it could be your anniversary. Simple things are like your birthday of a loved one, or an anniversary, or even of a friend, something like that. Can you let people know in advance? And if it is a challenge, what can you do to balance out? Are you developing your subordinates who can take on and work, stand in for you? Sometimes your bosses stand in for you. I think these are important aspects. Let me just share one example. A colleague called me a few years ago, and he had to travel from another country to India for an important meeting. And then he said, listen, my wife is in the family way, but if you say, boss, I'll come over. And now, since he mentioned to me that it has been a few years since they could have a baby and they tried different methods, I said, listen, we'll manage. Your presence can't be replaced there. You stay there. And sure enough, he stayed put, and he gave that assurance to his wife. And they had a baby a few months later. And, the family is complete. But making those choices, and he was quite happy about it, that yes, it worked well. So again, if things didn't work well, we don't know how it will be, we don't know who's accountable for that, because they say that's a family matter. But forever, the person will be thinking about situations. I was coaching another person, and then he told me, I said, why is it there's a little bit of hurt in you? He said, listen, my boss, asked me to give proof that my wife is admitted in the hospital when our child was being. Okay, so I'm very upset and angry with him. Okay. Then I said, okay, it's not good. What has happened and all that? And he said, now we've grown. Now I've become equal to him in role and rank. She's my colleague. Then I asked him, how old is your daughter? And he said, 7 years. I said, for 7 years, you're holding this. Can you let go? But the point is, because of such a thing, people hold on to their situations for such a long time.
Yeah, because they always remember that one thing that, triggered them.
Yes.
There might be hundreds of good instances that might have happened within an organization, but that one foul instance wherein, they're holding grievances for so long will always be there with them.
That's what I mentioned. It's like even medicines have expiry dates. These grievances don't have expiry dates.
That's a very relevant example that you shared, because I wouldn't say that it's impolite on an employer's angle as well, because they have to maintain a sense of consistency amongst all their employees, and they have to maintain the fact that if they're taking an urgency leave, if they're not able to come to office, or if they're not able to be a part of a meeting, of course there needs to be a solid reason behind it. But yes, I also acknowledge the fact that there are always those instances wherein somebody holds grievances for long. And yes, as medicines have expiry, so should the tenure of grievances should also be. So, very rightly that's pointed out. So, so what are some of the ways as employers that, can support their employees in balancing work and family responsibilities, according to you? We do know what the role of an employee is and how should they maintain this decent line of work and family life, but there should also be, and there must also be certain support points from an employer's perspective as well, wherein they can support their employees.
Yeah, I think I'll expand it also. How can employees also support their employers or their bosses?
Fair enough.
That is also key. But I think what is important is understanding what the shared goals and purpose are. That is a key aspect, which is important. And I remember Harsha Bogle telling me many years ago, when he was looking at excellence in people, whether it could be when he was broadcasting in the cricket story, he gave this example that when he asked someone, hey, can you tell me about an instance when Sehwag scored a similar six? And he says within about 60 seconds, that person gets that video and it's ready for broadcast. And he said that is something like excellence 100% in everything you do. So if you're at work, you give yourself 100%. If you're at family, you give yourself 100%. I would say that is an important aspect, which is a substratum. So if that's the attitude, then everything else flows through that. What can employers do? I would call for leaders or employers to be mindful. And my definition of mindful is having empathy and thought. Okay. That's what I define as mindful in some of my sessions as well. So both are important. Very often we are only looking at what is the work aspect, or we get too overdrawn by what emotions are there. Both, but we need to have both empathy and thought. And if that is there, I think a lot will change. A lot will be helpful to people in that whole balance. And wherein, if work is really going up, then a dialogue needs to be there that, okay, now we've been doing certain output, now it's gone up, what else can we do? That is important, because otherwise the burnout, as you say, is having a bigger impact. And fortunately, in our country, it doesn't manifest very adversely, as in some other countries you can see, where the anxiety, stress, and insecurity manifest in very morbid ways. So, but it can happen as well. There are those situations. Unfortunately, employers are not able to perceive. They think that the boundaries of the workspace is what it is. But today, people have an opportunity to express themselves through social media or sometimes through matters which can be violent as well. And then it doesn't help. We've had few things happen. So if you know that, hey, this is what is happening, I need to be mindful of the implications of my saying no or putting more pressure or explain to the employee the purpose of what it is done. I think that is important. So I think the communication is essential. Now, coming down to employees, they need to know that the buck stops with whoever is their leader or the employer. And there are regulatory pressures. There are stakeholder issues. There are also reputational issues. Customers are waiting, way more important. So the consequence of not stretching a little bit can have big impacts. And how you say no needs to be done with a sense of decency rather than being, very very abrupt or rude. So sometimes that also happens.
It should be very seamless.
So those are the things. So it's just that little bit of understanding and empathy, I would say, from both sides would enable this particular aspect. I mean, work becomes then a pleasure. Then when work is a pleasure, you don't have to work really. Everyone enjoys what they're doing. And end of the day, in as much the boss and subordinate relationships is one of the most paramount and important relationships beyond a family relationship. So how you nurture it is dependent on each of us. So I think that's what I would say is key. And if you're able to say, okay, this is my team member, I'm going to do something for him, I'll listen to him, take care, but also hold him accountable for what he's supposed to deliver.
Right.
I think we have a reasonable way forward. There is no silver bullet, but it's just that understanding is that little bit of a lubricant which will help things go better.
Of course. How much I wanted the session to go on and on, sir, because hearing such insightful information as well as your personal anecdotes has actually intrigued me within the conversation. But for now, thank you so much, Mr. David. It was a pleasure from our end to be speaking with you. I know you've been doing a lot into your own segments, and you've been an independent consultant with other organizations. And it was difficult for you to be taking out time for us. But then thank you so much, sir, for joining us, for being a part of these series and enlightening us with the information and the anecdotes that you've provided us, along with the analysis, of course. I hope that people who hearing actually these conversations actually imbibe certain aspects from your learnings, and people who have questions on their personal front as well as organizational front can actually tag you on LinkedIn and ask questions, and I know you'll be very happy and free to respond to them. Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure for us to be speaking with you.
Most welcome, Sugan. Thanks a lot. And you also have a good work-life balance.
That clearly shows, because you had proper anecdotes to share and analysis as well. So I'm sure you must be balancing your work life as well as your work in a pretty seamless manner.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.